Welcome back to Northwest City Politics in the Know with Juanita. We're glad that you're with us for our show again this week. We're glad there's people like you out in our audience that are interested in the issues that are happening in Northwest Community Television's viewing areas. It is important for good government to have people like you, people that are following what's happening in their cities and care about what's happening. And if you haven't watched our show before, during each week we'll have somebody on from one of the 9 cities in our viewing area to talk about what are the current issues that are happening in your city. And remember, if some of the issues resonate with you and you really care about them, we'll put on people's email and their phone numbers so that you can get in contact with them and kind of have some back and forth dialogue. So we're glad that you're with us tonight. And from time to time, we'll bring people on our show that give us some general information about our community, and we're doing that again tonight. Tonight, we're very happy to have with us Chief, should I police chief or chief?
Oh, you can call me Chief.
Okay.
You can call me
Chief.
Tim even.
Okay, Chief Tim Fournier from the New Hope Police Department. Now, each police department has their own things that they're working with, but as we talk about New Hope's Police Department, much of that will carry over to all of the other 9 cities too. So we're very happy that you're with us
I'm
tonight.
really glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And I asked you ahead of time to kind of think a little bit so you could tell the people out in our audience a little bit about your background with the city of New Hope and your job.
You bet. Well, I grew up in New Hope. And, you know, I think more and more you're seeing law enforcement personnel work in the cities that they grew up in. I wasn't the first officer in New Hope to have grown up there, but I grew up in New Hope, and my father was a firefighter for the city of New Hope. So he spent 20 years in the fire service with New Hope, and I think that probably wore off on me a little bit.
Oh, I bet.
And I originally went to college and I became a paramedic. And I was working with HCMC down in Minneapolis at a pretty young age. And in doing that, I got interested in law enforcement. You know, as paramedics and emergency medical personnel, you're usually called when things have happened. Whether it's an accident or an injury or some sort of trauma. And so you're showing up last. And I started to get the feeling that it would be nice to prevent some of these things from happening. So I got to know some Minneapolis officers working as a paramedic, and one thing led to another, and I went back to school, and I became a police officer in 1991 for the city of Richfield. In those days, well, in any day, you take the job that you get the offer from.
That's true.
And so in 1993, when New Hope had an opening, it was always my goal to work for my hometown. So I came back to New Hope in 1993 and started as a police officer. And just kind of worked my way up.
And now you're in charge of your department.
Now I'm in charge.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool.
Which is something I never considered as a possibility back then, but I don't think anybody does when you're starting out.
No, you don't know what the future's going to hold. So.
Absolutely.
And I think you were saying a little while back, it's just important what you do and how you do it in order to carry things out.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything you do in life stems from an attitude and having the right attitude. It's going to steer you one way or another. And you know, nothing was easy. But you know, if you have the right attitude and work hard, I think anything is possible in whatever you do. So I'm certainly an example of that.
Well, let's move on to some of the things that we'll talk about so people can learn a little more about what's happening in New Hope's Police Department. But people are a little bit aware of the fact that you have a response and then you have a patrol division. There's different categories that the policemen that are working for you work in. And maybe you can talk a little bit about the police officers first that are visible. They're out in the community and they're out patrolling. What are the different things that these police officers respond to, or what are the kinds of situations they get put into? Well,
the common thread that all the patrol officers have, and this is true nationwide. This could be true worldwide, depending on the type of society you're policing, is the police officers out there are there for the people. And they're there in many ways. They're there to answer 911 calls. It's primarily what we do is answer 911 calls. That's the reactive part. And those calls can range from anything from a medical emergency to a lost child to a significant trauma to a robbery, a burglary. You know, you name it, if it comes into 911, officers respond.
Right.
And that's the reactive part. Then there's the proactive part, which I think is equally important, although a little bit more complicated.
Okay.
Officers are trained really well in how to react. The challenging part for police officers is how to be proactive, how to do something when there's some downtime. And traffic enforcement is a proactive function, where you're actually working to educate the public. Now, some people consider education one way, some people consider another way. A ticket is certainly an education, but you know, there's a lot of warnings, there's a lot of discretion. So that proactive piece of getting out into the community, and I mean getting out of your car, walking into a business, getting to know the business owners, getting to know the residents of the streets. New Hope is a small city. We're busy, but it's small, and it's small enough for the officers to get to know the community, and I think we do that very well. So that patrol division, that uniform division, they react and they're proactive, and I think it's very important to have as much proactive activity as you can have. The reactive activity certainly is going to be there. It's never going to go away, sadly. And that's when you see us with our lights and sirens on and going to places. That's reactive. You may see lights and sirens when we're being proactive when it comes to traffic and things. But I think the uniform division is primarily viewed as the public as a 911 responder, and certainly we are. But I think it's important to know that there's a lot of proactive, positive interaction with the public
that would, like you say, underlie people's perceptions, right?
Right, and that's the best way to change a perception. And certainly in today's society is a prime example. The best way to change a perception is to talk with people and get out. Now, you're not going to change everybody's mind about everything. But you humanize the job. We're all people that go home to our families and have other interests besides law enforcement. And but it is a calling, I believe. But there are other things we do in our lives. So the more we let other people know that we are about as normal as anybody, except for we have the crazy idea to do the job we do. Is I think a better way to bridge that gap that always has existed, I think, between police and public to a certain extent.
Now, for this, New Hope is roughly 20,000, give or take some people.
Give or take a few thousand.
So for that size of city, how many police officers does it take for
those
functions?
There are differing opinions on that. There are statistical opinions based on crime rates and response times and types of crime. The FBI is very good at keeping statistics on all of our crime, and there are formulas that say you should have X amount of officers per 1,000 population, and almost every city in the nation will fall short of that formula. I think statistically we would probably have more than the 34 officers we have. If we were to reach the statistical goal of having enough police officers per 1,000 population based on crime rates and things like that. We have 34 total officers, and we have 20 officers on the street working in a response patrol division, and we now have 1 traffic officer that's proactive. So we have a total of 21 police officers that are assigned to the street, and that usually means 5 officers a shift. Per shift with a supervisor, included. So that's how we're able to do our job. We think the most effective way is to have that number. And
then it's partly your job to figure that out, right?
Well, it's my job, but I'm the kind of chief, I think I like a lot of collective brains around me. And you certainly learn from doing something. But you also learn what are your minimums? What are your minimum staffing levels? And that starts with, how do I keep the officers safe? Officers are safer in numbers. Officers handle calls better with larger numbers. People always talk about, wow, I saw 4 police cars pull over that one person. Well, that one person may have just left a crime scene. That one person may have not stopped. That one person may have more going on than just the person sees going by. So we look first at what minimally do we need on the street to stay safe. And then,
I hadn't thought of it that way,
and then how do we react properly so the public
right.
gets the best bang for their buck, so to speak.
Right.
You know, while one of us is on an emergency call, the other officer may be dealing with something else. So we try to staff it at a level that meets the needs of both the public and the safety of the officers. And over the years, that's gone up. And you know, it's a reflection of the times.
More problems.
More problems.
Yep.
More desire for law enforcement. More need for law enforcement. So.
Yeah, feeling safe in your city is important to people.
Very important, and it's not just crime. I want to say that New Hope was a very, I think our last survey, I think majority of people feel safe in New Hope.
Right, I think so.
But it's medical responses, and it's certain populations in certain. We have a large nursing home community in New Hope, so we respond to all medicals with the fire department backing us up or responding if we can't. So. There are a lot of other things that we'll respond to besides the reactive 911 criminal type calls.
So it's a job that has lots of changing needs in it.
Ever-changing.
You aren't going to get bored, right?
you know, some of the shifts can be slow. I think that's true for any police department, but in general, it's not a very boring job. That's for sure. Now,
another area that in your police department is a canine unit, and maybe you can give us some examples what this unit does, because you have.
We have two canine officers, yeah. I think we're really lucky for our size department to have two canines. We're able to put one canine on each of the night shifts, where typically they get used more, building searches and things like that. Our canine officers, you know, thousands of hours of training over their careers as canine officers, and they get involved in a variety of things. They're police officers. They respond to calls like normal officers would, but the dogs are also drug certified, so if there is a need for that, they can respond. And we pretty much have a mutual aid agreement with a lot of the cities around us that if someone needs a canine and they don't have one available, one of ours will respond. And the same goes for us. If our canines happen to be off and we need a canine officer for a building search or a vehicle search or something like that, that we have that ability to share resources. But besides the reactive canine response, the proactive side of the canine officer is a great side for the public. Demonstrations. School interaction with students. Our New Hope City Day, we have a very active demonstration of our canine unit. So canines are a great tool, but they also serve a great purpose in helping that interaction between the public. That's their way of getting out of the car. That dog's such a crowd pleaser, and kids are drawn to the dog, and adults are, and I think that's a great way to interact with the public. Better than a lot of ways we're able to do. Yeah, in a kind of a friendly fashion. Yeah, I mean the dogs are highly trained dogs, and they are to a certain extent a weapon that is under the control and direction of that officer. But they're dogs, and dogs, you know, people like dogs mostly. People like dogs, and they're very friendly dogs under the circumstances. But they're very, very good dogs when we need them to act in the capacity they've been trained in. So they serve an interesting dual purpose. Now, separate from canines, you also have animal control as being a function of the police department, right? Right. Most cities have an animal control unit. And these are non-sworn police officer positions, and they deal with a lot of the animal complaints, loose dogs, pet problems, licensing animals. We have a very knowledgeable animal control officer. He's got a lot of experience, and he handles a lot of the pet issues that people would have in the city, whether it's a loose dog or a dangerous dog, or issues with geese in the park and raccoons and. You name it, our animal control officer is involved. Where officers, the regular patrol officers, don't have time a lot to deal with, and the expertise. We depend on our person for their expertise and their training, and so it's a great way to let the citizens know that someone is out there to help them with their animals as well as themselves. So I can't imagine us without our animal control officer. Without that function. Yeah. We're almost sad to see him when he goes home for the day, because then at night the officers are kind of on their own. Then they have to handle so he works mostly day shift. Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, and there are a lot of pets around.
A lot of pets, and these days, you know, some people need to take better control of their pets.
Oh, right.
And it's a responsibility. When that pet gets loose, that dog gets loose, it's hard on the dog, especially this day and this time of year with the climate. But I think people have a natural apprehension to dogs and certain dogs.
Oh, right.
And that can cause a lot of problems. And unfortunately, there have been instances where dogs have been put down because of the behavior that's exhibited when a police officer responds to a loose dog call, and that's terrible.
Yeah, sad.
And
but
our animal control officer has a great way of corralling these pets and these animals and getting them safely caged.
Right.
And then we go back and we educate the homeowner and the pet owner about it. So I think it's a great way, again, to let the public know that not only are we there for you from a law enforcement standpoint, but we have some other divisions that are able to help you with, and people have questions about their pets. So.
And I think a lot of people might not be aware that there's a police reserve program, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about how this operates. And
sure, police reserves are pretty standard for most departments throughout the nation, and we couldn't be as effective as we are without our reserve unit. And police reserves are non-sworn civilians. It's a volunteer position.
Right.
There's no pay involved,
at
least for the most part, on our department. And they receive training through the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department. They put on a reserve training class a few times a year. We send all our reserve prospects down to the Sheriff's Department for training. And they really perform a number of tasks. They perform patrols. They actually supplement our police officers, usually weekend nights, or whenever we need them. And they patrol. They're non-sworn. They're not armed. So it is something that we allow them to interact with the public in ways that wouldn't put their safety at risk. They would back us up on calls that necessarily aren't calls that would involve a safety risk for them. But if we needed to watch a crime scene, if we needed them to assist on traffic stops, towing vehicles, that kind of interaction, that's what they're trained for. Our city festival, Duck Days, they help us out with that, with that kind of thing. And we farm our reserves out to other cities, Maple Grove, Crystal, Columbia Heights, all these cities that have their own city festivals, and they request help from reserve units, just like we do for our city festivals and events. So a critical part of our staff are the police reserves.
And how many people are in your police reserve?
Currently we have 13. I think we usually have room for at least 20 if we can get it. So sometimes we're short. It just depends on the interest at the time. I was a police reserve actually. Back for about a year before I became a police officer in Richfield. So in New Hope. So it was a great way for me to get my feet wet in a law enforcement way. And many reserves.
What is it really like?
Yeah, you bet. And many reserves go on to be police officers, whether it's on the department they're reserve at or different departments. We've hired officers that have had reserve experience in the background. It's a great way to get training if you're interested in law enforcement. But if you're just interested in serving your community and you want to wear a uniform, it's a great way to do that.
And are they looking for people now?
Sure, we always are.
And so we'll tell people out there in New Hope.
If you're interested in being a police reserve, you can always stop by the front desk at the City of New Hope Police Department or call our general police department number. And which is 763 531 5170. So, and you can ask the clerk on the phone you're interested in police reserves, and they'll give them the information. And there's an application process and a background check and things like that, interview, because we are training you to interact with police in some sensitive areas. So we have to vet our police reserves, but great way to become involved with the public.
And then all of the cities around here have police reserves.
Virtually every city. Yeah.
So it would be true across all of our 9 cities.
You bet. Wherever you live, inquire with your local police department if you're interested in police reserves.
Okay, now another volunteer program, moving down a different age level, is the Police Explorers program. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about that program.
So the police reserves assist us out on the street and with more direct law enforcement duties. The Police Explorer program is really kind of designed by the Boy Scouts of America, and it is a way for youth to become involved and interested in law enforcement. The fire department also has an Explorer program. So similar to that, usually ages 14 to 21. Once you turn 21, you can't be an Explorer anymore, but 14 is about the youngest that we'd take you. And it's a great way for kids who are interested in law enforcement or learning about law enforcement to become involved. And we have Explorer advisors who are police officers in the department that mentor the kids, and they train with them monthly and sometimes more. And we also involve our police explorers in Explorer conferences and Explorer competitions. So what a police explorer goes through is everything that a police officer may go through to learn to be an officer in a more simplistic and you know, it's not as dangerous. But we teach our police explorers how crime scenes are investigated. We teach them how traffic stops are done. We teach them how officers interact with the public. We teach them how to investigate certain crimes. And it's a great way for kids to become involved in really what it's like to be an officer. And
it sounds like it.
We have hired people who have been police explorers on our department as officers.
So kind of it can be part of a
You bet. It's a great stepping stone for kids. And some kids may be interested in law enforcement and they're doing it for a project for school. And then they find, wow, I really like this. And they stay with us for years. Others, you know, find out this is not for them. But it's by no means a physically demanding thing. It's a great way to interact with fellow students, fellow kids in your community, and they get a uniform and an Explorer badge, and we teach them the pride of wearing the uniform. And again, they also, like the reserve unit, will help us with city events, traffic control, things like that. And it gives them a chance to get out in the public and use the training we gave them. So I'm really proud of our Explorer unit. We currently have 5 to 6 Explorers, and we're always looking for more. So the same way you'd contact the police department about the reserve unit, you can certainly contact them about the Explorer unit.
Yeah, because we're always telling people, get involved in your community, and here's a couple of new ways for them to get involved.
Yeah, and when I was in high school and I went to Armstrong and lived in the community, the police explorers were you know, alive and well then. So we've had an Explorer unit since 1983. And there are several, I won't name names, but there are several police officers and some chiefs in the area, in the metro, who were police explorers at one time. So it's a great way to get interested in it and work your way up. When you turn 21, if you haven't started your college career and maybe going towards law enforcement, you can always be a police reserve. So.
And then the last part of that area of response and patrol, there's a Quad City SWAT team, and people have they've got some ideas of that, but maybe you can tell us who's involved and maybe a brief example of what they do.
Well, we share officers among 4 departments for our SWAT team. Now, some police departments are big enough to have their own SWAT team. We share officers with Crystal, Robbinsdale, and Golden Valley. So that's your Quad City SWAT team. And each department allows a certain number of officers to be on the team. And it's a selective process. There's a physical fitness part of this. Not everybody is able to be a SWAT person. Not everybody wants to be a SWAT person. I was on the SWAT team for 14 years. And it's a demanding job. There's a lot of extra training. But it's an experience that when you're in it and when you're done with it, you'll always have that with you. There's a lot of camaraderie with the SWAT team, and it's interesting for us because we have officers from different departments. And so it kind of bridges the gap between our cities. And for the most part, SWAT teams are trained to be called out when you need that special response. And the patrol officers have secured the area. They've responded to a call that is a call that meets the criteria for a SWAT response. And the team is highly trained to handle specific responses. And it could be a barricaded person. It could be a person who's having a mental crisis. It could be an issue with a firearm.
Yeah.
It could be a hostage situation.
Yeah.
And the SWAT team also does a lot of the high-risk search warrants. So in any of the 4 cities, if there's intelligence through our narcotics officers, or another neighboring city is investigating a crime that may involve residents from our cities, and they need to do a search warrant, if there's any kind of risk involved, where we have a significant firearm risk, or risk of that nature, the SWAT team will conduct the warrant. So for the most part, the SWAT team does mostly high-risk search warrants. But they train for those call-outs that you see on TV once in a while. And so the uniqueness of our team, I think, is in its makeup of the 4 cities, because that expands that area. So,
and supports each other.
We do, and the chiefs, all the chiefs involved of those 4 cities, we meet and discuss the team, and we're all very supportive of the team members. And having been on it, I understand what it's like to be a member, so yeah, they've got my support. And when they're called out, we know that they know what they're doing.
Well, now, something far simpler, and we thought we'd mention this, because we haven't had a whole lot of snow yet, is fire hydrants and how neighborhoods can help.
Yeah, the fire department has an Adopt a Hydrant program. And it's similar to adopting a freeway. You see the signs about adopting a roadway and cleaning up the garbage. Well, this is making sure your fire hydrant's shoveled out. So when there is an emergency, the fire department can find the hydrant and hook into it. So if you want more information about that, if people want to know about adopting a fire hydrant, they can contact the West Metro Fire Department.
Yeah, because we're putting up the city's phone number and the city's website.
Yep, and the main city line can direct you to the fire department as well. But very important. Now, we haven't had a lot of snow.
No, not yet.
A lot of cold.
Yeah.
But when it comes, and it will, it's important that the fire hydrants are shoveled out. So
this is our public service announcement,
this is it's a great one.
Well, I want to thank you so much for sharing a lot of information and helping us understand what are all the different parts of the police department. Like you see the car go by, or you see the red lights, then I think people have a much better idea now of all the different parts that you're involved with. So I thank you very much.
You're welcome. I really appreciate being here.
We'll ask those of you out there to be sure to tune in next week for part 2 on New Hope's Police Department. And remember, if you've got questions and you live in New Hope, contact Chief Fournier. And if you're in the other city and something struck you, contact your police departments there too, to get some dialogue, some information going. And we'll see you next week. Bye.